Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We have two translators for Malyalam and Marathi. What about Tamil, Kannada, Tulu, Gujarati, Marathi? Where are they? Marathi is done. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Chalo, repeat after me. Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya, Jayo Nityananda. Why nobody is repeating? Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya, Jayo Nityananda.
Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda.
Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jayo Jayo Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jayo Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Hope you can hear that. Playing music? Yes, see what happens here. Set up professional in audio settings. Professional. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
We can't hear that, huh?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Another day.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Shall I begin? Can I be heard clearly?
Yeah, very clear.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jutapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagarujatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitantam Shujivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Shaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitang Shamantra Guru Ajot Tashika Guru Ganta Chadane Age Goriyamanun Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Prachane Nirvishesha Shandavari Prashtade Shatanane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sivasadi Gopaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, having gone to Gaya Dham on the pretext of offering the Shraddha ceremony for the departed Jagannath Mishra, by the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, of course he is the Supreme Lord, but in terms of enacting his pastimes, he met in Gaya Dham, he met Srila Ishwar Puri Prabhupada. At that time, actually, already a relationship had been established between Sri Shachinandan and Srila Ishwar Puri Prabhupada. Ishwar Puri Prabhupada had been residing, he had visited Navadip, Mayapur, and he had remained here for 8 months staying in the house of Gadadhar Pandit, just next to the house of Advaita Acharya. And every day, Gosundur would take association of Srila Ishwar Puri Prabhupada and hear from him. So already a relationship had been established like guru-disciple in terms of the shiksha. And then Ishwar Puri Prabhupada actually in Gaya Dham, he had a dream that the Supreme Lord would appear in front of him the next day and that he should give him initiation. So they met, and of course Mahaprabhu was already overwhelmed seeing the worship of the lotus feet of Sri Madhusudan in Gaya Dham. You could say this is the first Tirtha Jatra. Mahaprabhu before this had travelled on one occasion, at least that we hear, one journey away from Mayapur to East Bengal, Faridpur, and he was there for a few months teaching. This is perhaps 3 or 4 years earlier. And at that time also, out of separation, Lokhi Devi, she couldn't tolerate the separation of the Lord, and she gave up her body. So when Mahaprabhu returned, he'd been widowed. And he married a second time to Vishnupriya. So now at this time, he's going to Gaya Dham, met with Ishwar Puri. And of course, the initiation ceremony occurred Mahaprabhu, in order to teach us the importance of taking initiation. He demonstrated a great change in his life. He was given the name Sri Krishna Chaitanya, and he demonstrated a great change. Kipa mantra dilo goshai, kipata ball. What mantra have you given me, oh spiritual master? Kipata ball. What is its power? Jopati mantra korele pagal. I've become crazy. Jopati mantra korele pagal. So Mahaprabhu, even at that time, we were hearing in our last session how Mahaprabhu suddenly in the middle of the night, he had a great burning desire to go to Vrindavan and take shoulder of the lotus feet of the Lord. We actually see that this desire of Mahaprabhu to go to Vrindavan was a constant theme. Immediately upon taking sannyas, which is 4 years later, Krishna having accepted this dress of a sannyasi, I would go to Vrindavan and there engage in secluded worship of Lord Krishna. And similarly, Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan. Sachi Devi said, go to Jagannath Puri. He agreed. And then he went on South Indian tour. He came back to Puri, but still he was trying to get permission from Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to go to Jagannath Puri, to go to Vrindavan. Took 2 years. And eventually Mahaprabhu traveled to Vrindavan. So even at this stage, when he's a grihastha 4 years earlier, Mahaprabhu, he had a great desire to go to Vrindavan from Gaya at the time of being initiated. And we heard that Akashvani, the voice from the sky, said that no, now's not the time to go to Vrindavan, and there's so much you have to do in Mayapur. You have to establish a Shankirtan movement, bring together the Panchatattva, deliver Jagai Madhai, deliver the Chandkazi, inaugurate the preaching, order Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur to begin the preaching, so many things. Defeat the Digbijai, inaugurate the Nam Sankirtan, congregational chanting movement, so many things. So Mahaprabhu, he didn't go to Vrindavan at that time, and he returned to Mayapur. Now let's hear, we'll be hearing now, today, about what actually happened when Mahaprabhu, having had this experience in Gaya Dham, being initiated by Ishwar Puri, he stayed there for some time, and then he returned to Mayapur. So today we're going to be hearing, this is the beginning of the Madhya Kanda of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Actually, the Adi Kanda, 17 chapters, it ends with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepting initiation in Gaya. That's the chapter 17, and that's the end of Adi Kanda. And now Mahaprabhu, he'll come back to Mayapur, and his arrival in Mayapur, that's the beginning of the Madhya Kanda. So we're reading today from the Madhya Kanda, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, chapter 1. Madhya Kanda Kota Vai Shuno Ek Chite Shankirtan Arambha Hoilo Jena Mate. Oh, brothers and sisters, listen with Ek Chite, with great focused attention. This Madhya Kanda Kota, these descriptions in the Madhya Kanda of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Shankirtan Arambha Hoilo Jena Mate, and here the descriptions of how the Shankirtan movement began. Sankirtan Aramba Hoilo Janamate. So of course Sachi Devi was was so overjoyed that Goshunda had returned from Gayadam. Lokhi Devi, that's Vishnu Priya, she was glowing with happiness seeing the Lord's face. And all the clouds of loneliness dissipated from the mind of Sachi Devi and from Vishnu Priya. And so many Vaishnavas were overjoyed to see that Mahaprabhu had returned from Gayadam. And then they'd seen this extraordinary change. It was evident an extraordinary change in his behavior. Previously, Goshunda was a proud scholar, and his business was to defeat all of the other scholars that he would meet. And as there were innumerable scholars in Navadip, Chaturdik Hoite Lok Navadip Ejai, Navadip Poileshe Biddaroshpai, from all directions. People were coming to Navadip Dham, Chaturdik Hoite Lok Navadip Ejai. Why is that? Because Navadip Porile, if you study in Navadip, Shai Biddaroshpai, you get the taste for learning. So there were so many scholars. And in the business of scholars is to argue and defeat, show their superiority in learning. This is the business of the Brahmins. And Goshunda, he was the Dvijamani, the jewel of the Brahmins of Navadip. Sharba Navadipe, Sarbalok Hoilo Doni, Nimai Pandit, Odda Pokshiromani. All through Navadip, Sharba Navadipe, Sharbalok Hoilo Doni, all you could hear from the lips of the residents, Nimai Pandit, Odda Pokshiromani, that Nimai Pandit is Odda Pokshiromani, the jewel, the crushed jewel of all of the professors of Navadip. So this was his position, this was his reputation, and this was his Lila. Now, returning from Gayadam, there was an evident and extraordinary change in his behavior, that simply by repeating the name of Gayadam, or Padapada Tirtha, a lotus feet, just by remembering that holy place, Mahaprabhu would incessant flow of tears poured from his eyes. Enough to water a whole flower garden, just by remembering Pada Tirtha, Gayadam. He sighed deeply, and his body was covered with horripilation, and he shivered like an autumn leaf. So seeing this, the devotees were astonished, and the news quickly spread that Lord Chaitanya is shedding tears of love of Godhead. Now, there was a tree in the Srivas Thakur's courtyard, and that tree, Kunda Ga Chache Srivas Mondire, Kunda Rupe Keva Kalpataru Avatare, that in the Kunda Rupe, that's a jasmine tree. So in the Srivas Mondire, in the courtyard, and just in the temple of Srivas Thakur, Kunda Rupe, in the form of a Kunda, a jasmine tree, Kalpataru Avatare, actually that was a Kalpataru, a desire-fulfilling tree from the spiritual world. In any case, we don't have the eyes to see, but Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains that all the trees in the holy Dham are spiritual. He says, Chintamani Rupoye Gormandal Chidanandamoy Dham Chinmoy Shakal. This spiritual Dham, which is made of spiritual energy, Chinmoy Shakal, everything is spiritual in the holy Dham. Jol Bhumi Brika Adi Sakal Chinmoy. Jol, the water, Bhumi, the earth, Brika, the trees, Shakal Chinmoy, they're all spiritual. Achincha Shakti Karja Prapanchika Noi, they're made of spiritual energy. Prapanchika Noi, not made of the material energy. So that's the transcendental reality. So this particular, even though all the trees in the holy Dham, all the residents, the birds, the animals, they're all special in the holy Dham. But this tree was particularly special. It was an incarnation of a Kalpa Briksha tree, a desire-fulfilling tree from the spiritual world. Kunda Rupe Keba Kalpataru Avatare. So all the devotees, because that Kunda tree, that jasmine tree, will give flowers all year round. Usually the jasmine gives, just beginning now actually this morning I picked a few jasmine flowers for the worship of the Lord. So the season of the jasmine is just now beginning. From what I recall, it comes a couple of times a year, but now we're kind of, there's actually the wet season, the Borshakal now, but even though it's been raining so much in Mayapur already. So this special Kunda tree, all the Vaishnavas would gather around this Kunda jasmine tree in the courtyard of Srivas Thakur every morning because they were all doing puja. Actually, we don't hear the description so much, but it's not so much emphasized in the Gaudiya, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the puja of the Vaishnavas, because it's assumed that they're all doing puja. Unlike our circumstance in our international society for Krishna consciousness, we have a central temple and devotees visit the temple and the worship is done there. At the time of Mahaprabhu, there was no such central temple. All of the Vaishnavas, they'd have the temple in their own homes. And Mahaprabhu actually, he began the Sankirtan movement in the house of Srivas Thakur. So Srivas Thakur had his home, he had his temple, and he would worship the Lord, and Advaita Acharya would worship the Lord. There's descriptions of Advaita Acharya worshipping the Lord. And Gadada Pandit and all of the Vaishnavas, they're all Brahmin Vaishnavas, and they're all worshipping the deities at home. And so in this way, they're collecting the flowers. They would gather in the morning, and at that place, the kunda tree that gave flowers all year round, and many Vaishnavas would gather there every morning because you're guaranteed. There was no limit. There was no limit, actually. That kunda tree, no matter how many flowers were picked, it had exhaustible bloom of fresh flowers. Inexhaustible bloom of fresh flowers. Isn't that extraordinary? Huh? No shortage of flowers. So all of the devotees would be there every morning because there'd be so much, no end to the supply. And kunda is very fragrant, very soft, very beautiful. So the devotees, they would gather around that kunda tree in the morning and discuss the latest transcendental news. What's going on in Mayapur, what's going on amongst in the lives of the devotees. They exchange topics on Krishna. So Gadada Pandit was there, Gopinath, Ramdas, Srivas Thakur was there. And that Srivas Thakur's younger brother, Sriman Pandit. There were 4 brothers, Srivas, Sriman, Srinidhi, and Sriman. Yeah, Sriman. So the younger brother came and he was overwhelmed with happiness and joy, effervescent with happiness. And the devotees, they asked, why are you so happy today? What's happened? And he said, yes, certainly something wonderful has happened. And then they said, so tell us. And he said, so listen, Parama Adbhut Kota, the most extraordinary news, Parama Adbhut Kota, Maha Ashambhab, the impossible, Maha Ashambhab, Parama Adbhut Kota, Maha Ashambhab, Nimai Pandit, Hoilo Parama Vaishnav. Nimai Pandit has become a Parama Vaishnav. They're astonished. Now, already Nimai, we can say he's a Vaishnava, because we heard even in the class, when the students would come without wearing the Vaishnava tilak on their foreheads, Nimai would chastise them. So he was wearing tilak, he had deity. His father was, what we hear when he was a young child, his father was worshipping the Shalagram Shila and Adhokshada Vishnu. And there were special ceremonies at home, and Nimai was participating. And so he was Vaishnava. But he wasn't in this way, as such, what we describe as Parama Vaishnava Mahabhagavat, constantly, incessantly shedding tears of love of Godhead. He wasn't like that before, but now he was, constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness, Premavesh. And he described his experience that in Gaya Dham, how he received the mercy of Srila Ishwar Puri Prabhupada and felt spiritual emotions erupting in his consciousness at that time. And also when he came back, on the way back, he visited Kanai Natashala. That's an extraordinary place. It's near Ramkelly, Melda now, modern city of Melda. Ramkelly we're familiar with. We've discussed on different occasions in these sessions about how Mahaprabhu visited Ramkelly and delivered Rupa and Sanatan. So just a little further on. In fact, at that time, Sanatan Goswami, he advised Mahaprabhu it's not appropriate to go to Vrindavan with such a large crowd. And Mahaprabhu didn't say anything at the time, but the next morning he'd reached Kanai Natasala and he took bath in the Ganga. And then he thought that, yes, what Sanatan said is correct. So Mahaprabhu, he decided to abandon his journey to Vrindavan at that time. This is described in Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi Antya-lila chapter 4 and Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya-lila chapter 16, the Lord's attempt to go to Vrindavan. So then he returned. So on his return, he returned to Jagannath Puri. So he'd reached Kanai Natasala. So at the same place now, he's coming back from Gayadam, and at Kanai Natasala, ISKCON has that project. Basically, it's a small hillock, a small hill on the banks of the Ganga, and a temple on top of the hill. This is where the Lila happened, and ISKCON has that whole property there and has the temple there. And Mahaprabhu, he saw the form of Nandadulal, Shamsundar appeared to him at that place as he was returning from Gayadam in Kanai Natasala. So he's explaining here that he saw the Lord, he saw the Lord appeared to him and then disappeared. And this is the mood that Mahaprabhu is now experiencing, that where is that bluish boy that appeared before me and then disappeared. So Mahaprabhu is constantly crying out in feelings of separation. His body is overwhelmed with ecstatic symptoms, shivering, horripilation, and falling onto the ground just by remembering the experiences that he had in Gayadam and in Kanai Natasala on his return from Gayadam. Profuse tears were incessantly pouring from the eyes of the Lord, just like Mother Ganga, Ma Ganga had appeared there. So when he was describing this, the Sriman Pandit was describing this, and Sriman Bachchan Shuniya Bhaktigan, Sriman Pandit, Hari Boli Mahadani Koilo Takan, Hari Boli Mahadani, they all chanted Hari Boli, Hari, they all chanted the name of Hari in great jubilation at that time. And they said that Sriman had said that Mahaprabhu at that time, he said, tell all the devotees to assemble in the house of Shuklamba Brahmachari. Mahaprabhu, he was a Grihastha. Mahaprabhu married twice, Loki Priya, Vishnu Priya. Nityananda Prabhu also had married twice. Advaita Acharya married. Most of Mahaprabhu's associates married. Some were not married. Here's one of the unmarried associates. His name is Suklambara Brahmachari. Gadadha Pandit also Brahmachari, never married. Nakula Brahmachari, Haridash Thakur. So some renounced associates of the Lord, even whilst he's a Grihastha. He's a Grihastha. We'll hear now 4 years of the Sankirtan Lila before he accepts sannyas. But there were some renunciates in Mahaprabhu's association, even at that time, Haridash Thakur, for example. Suklamba Brahmachari, Gadadha Pandit, Nakula Brahmachari. And subsequently, when Mahaprabhu took sannyas, then he was surrounded by the renunciates, like Saurabh Damodar, Paramananda Puri, Govinda, Haridas Thakur in Jagannath Puri. They were mostly renunciates that were associating closely with the Lord in Jagannath Puri, as he himself was a sannyasi. I wonder...
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you unmute? Hare Krishna.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. We had a short snap. Things went out. Everything went black for a moment. I guess we're back, and you can hear me.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Some Mahaprabhus, some renunciates were there even whilst he was a Grihastha. So Gadadha Pandit was also picking flowers. Gadadha Pandit, and he heard all of this description about Nimai, and so he also desired to go to the house of Suklambara Brahmachari and see and hear what. Let me go and see for myself what he speaks about, Lord Krishna. So then, that evening in the house of Suklambara Brahmachari, Mahaprabhu was there with the devotees reciting different slokas from Shastra, and he's explaining his predicament. I'd found the Nandadulal, I'd found him, and then he disappeared, and I fell down completely paralyzed. And he would embrace the pillars in the house of Suklambara Brahmachari and cry out, "Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna?" So, and in this way, he was incessantly crying a love of Godhead, and all the devotees were also crying, and they were astonished to see the manifestation of ecstatic symptoms. So then Mahaprabhu, he asked, Gadadha Pandit wasn't actually directly there in the room, he was in another room. And Mahaprabhu inquired who is inside the house? And Suklambara Brahmachari said, your beloved Gadadhar. And then they met. Gadadhar Pandit came, and Mahaprabhu was explaining how fortunate you are, Gadadhar Pandit, that from childhood, you've been worshipping Sri Hari, and I've been wasting my time in pursuing academic goals and scholarly goals. And in this way, now I understand the most precious jewel of love of Godhead. And I saw Krishna and he disappeared. And in this way, as he's again and again, like a madman, Goshundor, he fell unconscious on the ground. So what are the devotees doing at that time? They perform kirtan. What to do? One time in the class, Srila Prabhupada suddenly, I think it was class in Vrindavan, Prabhupada suddenly just stopped speaking, overwhelmed with love of Godhead. He was choked up, he couldn't speak. And the devotees are all astonished. They're sitting there in awkward silence. And then one devotee, they began kirtan. And Prabhupada says it was the appropriate thing to do. So here, all the devotees are seeing these extraordinary symptoms of Lord Chaitanya, which is newly demonstrating. And what did they do? They ecstatically perform kirtan. Utilo kirtan rol, prema krandan, premamoy holo shukramba bhavan, premamoy. The whole house of Suklambara Brahmachari was filled with ecstatic mood of love of Godhead as the kirtan in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shuniya Shakal Mahabhagavad Gan, Hari Hari Boli Shab Karena Krandan. And they're also crying. All the devotees are also crying. Hari Hari Boli, chanting the holy name. Shabai Karen Krandan, they're also crying. Shuniya Shakal Mahabhagavad Bhagavad Gan, hearing the prayers and the meditation and the emotions being expressed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that was in the evening. Now the next day, Mahaprabhu, he visited Gangadas Pandit. Isn't that so charming? That so it's so much etiquette that he comes back from the journey and he goes and takes the darshan of his teacher, Gangadas Pandit. He's Sandipani Muni, as we hear that. Navadip Ache Oddapak Shiromani, Gangadas Pandit Heno Sandipani. Sandipani Muni, he appeared in Navadip. He's the guru of Krishna and Balaram. And he appeared in Navadip Dham just to be the teacher of Nimai. So Nimai goes to see Gangadas Pandit and he falls at his feet and offers his respect. And his teacher affectionately embraced Nimai. Guru Bole, Guru and his spiritual master, he says, Dhanna Bap Tomar Jiban Pitra Kul Matra Kul Koryale Mochon. How blessed you are, my son, that Pitrakul ebang Matrikul Koryale Mochon, you've delivered the families of your father and mother. Now that's very interesting because the words of Srila Ishwar, the words of Srila Gangadas Pandit in this connection seems to be that he's referring more to the ceremony of the Pinda, the Shraddha ceremony to deliver the ancestors, as we know is performed in Gaya Dham. And one can go and have all of the ancestors, in case they are in a hellish condition or in a ghostly form, they can be delivered by the descendants performing the Shraddha ceremony. In fact, this is the responsibility of every son. That's why one requires a son, Putra. Putra is one who delivers one from Put, from the hell, by performing the Shraddha ceremony after one's departed. So he's saying that in that way. However, we know that just by becoming a devotee of the Lord, one delivers so many family members. Devashi Bhutapta Niram Pitrinam Nakinkaranayam Nirincharajan Savatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gatom Mukundam Pariritam Kartum. Just by becoming a Savatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam, a surrendered devotee at the lotus feet of the Lord, that all of one's duties to Devashi Bhutapta Nirinam Pitrinam, to the demigods, to the rishis, to the common living entities, pitrinam, to the forefathers, all of those duties that one has are fulfilled just by savatmanaya sharanam sharanyam, surrendering to the lotus feet of the Lord. And that's also confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sarva Krishna Bishashoy Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Kritoy. By performing Krishna Bhakti, one performs all of that, one completes just by loving Krishna and performing devotional service to Krishna. The Panchanga Bhakti, 5 important items, Sadhu Sangha, Nam Kirtan, Bhagavat Sravan, associating with devotees, chanting the holy name, hearing the Bhagavatam, Mathura Bas, living in the holy dham, Sri Murtira Shadaya Shaban, worshipping the deity. This is the 5 activities, main activities of devotional service. By performing these, one completes all the responsibilities that he has in life, actually. Everything is completed just by performing these 5 activities. That's the conclusions of the Shastra. So actually, having become a devotee, he delivered, even in Mayapur, if one visits Mayapur Dham and in Gaur-Purnima day, bathes in the Ganga, was that Palgun Diboshe, was that Jai John Palgun Diboshe, Ganga Nagare, Ganga Snan Kore, Goranga Upabash Kore, Goranga Puja Kore, the one who, Falgun Punima Diboshe, on the full moon of Falgun Mash, Ganga Nagarete in Mayapur, Ganga Snan Kore, bathes in Ma Ganga, Upabash Kore, having fasted, and Sri Gauranga Puja, having worshipped Sri Gauranga by performing Shankirtan. Sahasra Purusha Purvagon Shange, taking along with him Sahasra Purusha Purvagon, 1,000 ancestors, Sahasra Purusha Gon Shange, Sri Goloka Prapti Ho Jota Tota More. Wherever that person departs, having you take your bath in the Ganga on Gaur-Purnima day in Mayapur, then no matter how you depart, no matter where you depart, Jota Tota More, Sri Goloka Prapti Ho, that person attains the Sri Goloka. Sahasra Purusha Gon Shange, along with 1,000 ancestors. So in this way you can see that just by bathing in the Ganga, one can deliver all one's thousands of ancestors, not only deliver them, but they attain Goloka Vrindavan. Just by performance of Bhagavad Bhakti. Coming back in a moment, just a slight technical adjustment required. So in this way, prophetic words of Srila Gangadas Pandit. Now, Nimai begins his teaching as is directed. He says, Gangadas Pandit says, all your students have been waiting for you. They haven't opened their books, and nothing could induce them to open their books. They've all just been waiting for you to return. So carry on with your classes. So Nimai goes, as usually, he goes takes his bath and goes to the courtyard of Mukunda Sanjay, that's the Durga temple, and that's where he's giving his class every day, in the temple of Ma Durga, in the house of Mukunda Sanjay. So all the students came, and as in the beginning of the class, the practice would be to chant the names of Hari in the beginning of the class. So, Hari Boli Punta Milel Shishagan, Shunine Ananda Hoi Sri Sachinandan. Just hearing the students chant the name of Hari Hari to begin the studies, hearing that, Shunina Ananda Hoilo Sri Sachinandan, Mahaprabhu became overwhelmed in love of Godhead. And he immediately demonstrating the symptoms of ecstatic prema, forgetting his senses, and any comment that he made, all of the aphorism and commentaries were just describing the holy name of Lord Krishna. Mahaprabhu explained, Agama Vedanta Adi Jota Darshan Sarva Shastre Kohe Krishna Para Bhaktidan. That all of the agamas, all of the Vedantas, all of the scriptures, they simply describe Sarva Shastra Kohe Krishna Pade Bhaktidan, the wealth of devotional service to Krishna. And in this way, Mahaprabhu is giving his class simply about Krishna Bhakti. For many, many hours, he would constantly describing the glories of Sri Krishna and Bhagavad Bhakti. And Mahaprabhu, coming out of the trance of love of God, he asked his students, how are my commentaries today? And the students replied that we couldn't understand anything. You said that Krishna is the purport to every word that we studied. So in this way, the students were a little bewildered, and they went to Gangadas Pandit to inquire, to lodge a concern, actually. Isn't that interesting? They certainly didn't gossip on Facebook, but they went to the appropriate authority and raised a concern that he's connected the root of every word to Krishna. His purports and commentaries simply describe Krishna. Since his return from Gayadam, he doesn't mention anything else except Krishna. The students, they explained to Gangadas Pandit. He chants, the hairs on his body stand on end. Sometimes he laughs, he shouts, he manifests different moods. Tell us what we should do. So Gangadas Pandit, he says, okay, that's fine. I'll speak with Nimai. I'll adjust this situation. So on that afternoon, again, Vishwambar, he came to the house of Gangadas Pandit, and Guru Charan Duli Prabhu Loy Shire Bidda Labh Ho Guru Ashirvad Kore. Guru Charan Duli, taking the dust of the lotus feet of his teacher on his head, Srila Gangadas Pandit, Mahaprabhu takes the dust of his lotus feet on his head, and Gangadas Pandit, he gave blessings to Nimai, Bidda Labho, Bidda Labho, Guru Ashirvad Kore, become learned, become highly learned. He gave the blessings. And then Gangadas Pandit, he's explaining that, look, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being a teacher and being a teacher of grammar. We're very elated that you've become a devotee, but still you have your material responsibilities, and you should carry on with your work. Banasram Dharma or Brahman, you should teach. Your father, Jagannath Mishra, he was a great scholar, he was a great Vaishnava. There's no incompatibility. Your maternal grandfather, Nilamba Chakraparti Thakur, he was a great Vaishnava and such a learned scholar. He was an astrologer. He gave the astrological reading at the birth of Mahaprabhu. So in this way, this is the tradition of your family, and you carry on with your work as a teacher, and you practice Bhagavad Bhakti. We're very happy with that. So Nimai was very much appreciative here, thank you, that his guru had given him the appropriate advice, and he agreed that yes, this is what he would do. So then the next day, he went to the banks of the Ganga, where he usually gives his class, and sitting on the banks of the Ganga, he began to establish different points. And this time he's trying to follow the orders of Srila Gangadas Pandit, and he's trying to carry on teaching in the way that he did before. And again, some of those that style began to manifest. He would chastise the different scholars of Navadip. They call themselves Bhattacharya, and they have audacity to debate. But who can come and refute the arguments that I established? Is there anyone who can challenge my arguments? And in this way, again, he's demonstrating his reputation as a powerful scholar, and all of the students were once again very much overjoyed to see that, yes, Nimai, again, he's the way he was before. And in this way, the Lord of the Universe, Nimai, he challenged everyone there on the banks of the Ganga, and the scholars, out of fear, they would come and offer their respects to him, and he would break their scholarly pride to pieces. And in this way, for hours, he would giving his class. Now, at that time, on the banks of the Ganga, there was the house of one Vaishnav. His name was Ratnagarbha Acharya, and he was very fond of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. So, sitting in the doorstep of his cottage, just not far from where Nimai was giving class on the banks of the Ganga, Ratnagarbha Acharya, he was reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. And what section was he reading from? He was actually reading from the pastime of Krishna and Balaram begging the food from the wives of the ritualistic priests in Vrindavan. That story, isn't that fascinating? Actually, I reflect on that story. That's the first story I ever read of the Krishna book. I got the Krishna book many years ago. Actually, it's more than 40 years ago. In 1983, 1984, I got the Krishna book, and then I became a devotee in 1985. That's on Prabhupada's appearance day. So this Prabhupada's appearance day, it'll be 40 years ago. So, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas and Srila Prabhupada, we're still here. So at that time, I was becoming a devotee. I got the Krishna book, and I just opened it randomly, and I happened to read that story of Krishna and Balaram begging food from the wives of the Brahmins of Vrindavan. So I always reflect on that story with fond memories. So that Brahmin, Ratnagarbha Acharya, on the banks of the Ganga, just near where Nimai was giving his class and demonstrating again his scholarly brilliance, that Brahmin was reciting that particular incident of Srimad Bhagavatam, he was describing how the wives of the Yogic Brahmins, the Krishna and Balaram had come and requested the prasadam. We're hungry. Actually, Balaram had come, and the Brahmins just ignored him. And so Balaram went back, and then they said, go to the wives, and you can do it wasn't Balaram, it was the cowherd boys, go to the wives. And then they said, oh yes, we're very happy to feed Krishna and Balaram, but they have to come here. We're going with you. We're not just sending a parcel. We're going personally to deliver the prasadam so we can get darshan of Krishna. So then they came into the forest, and then those cowherd maidens, the wives of the Yogic Brahmins, they saw Krishna. They saw Krishna in the forest, and the verse which describes the form of Krishna that they saw, that's what Ratnagarbha was describing. He was reading that they saw the beautiful young boy, his darkish complexion, wearing a golden yellow dhoti, decorated with flower garlands around his neck, and a peacock feather slanted sideways from his crown. He was with his friends, and he stood leaning against a friend, his left hand on his shoulder, and in his right hand he twirled a lotus flower. His ears were decorated with earrings in the shape of lotus flowers, and his cheeks carried decorative designs of sandalwood paste, and a sweet smile played on his lotus-like mouth. So hearing this verse, describing the beautiful form of Sri Hari in Vrindavan, hearing this verse, when the sound of this verse entered into the ears of Vishwambara, then he fell down unconscious while sitting down giving his class in front of the students. He heard that verse, he heard that description. He was trying his best to again regain his practice of being an excellent, brilliant scholar and defeating all the other scholars. But when giving the class and he heard that verse ended, and immediately the prema vesh, the love of Godhead, again erupted in his heart, and he became overwhelmed, and unrestrained tears of love of Godhead flooded the entire area, which were pouring out of his eyes like a syringe. And the shivering, the horripilation, and the crying manifested in the person of the Lord. And he went and he embraced that. He embraced Ratnagarbha Acharya. Paya Vaikuntha Nayake Alingon Prem Purna Ratnagarbha Hoilo Takon. When the Alinga, the embrace of the Vaikuntha Nayak, the master of Vaikuntha, when he embraced Ratnagarbha Acharya, Prem Purna Ratnagarbha Hoilo Takon, he became overwhelmed with love of Godhead. And all of the students were completely amazed. So then, accompanied by his students, Mahaprabhu went to the bank of the Ganga, and they sprinkled some water on his head. He regained his external consciousness and discussed Krishna for some time. And in this way, he tried to give his class, but he was unable to, and constantly the overwhelming feelings of separation from Krishna Mahabhava, Radha Prema, were manifesting in the character of the Lord. And he would give the class, and he was simply inducing the students to engage themselves in the devotional service of the Lord. Bolo Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Shuno Krishna Nam. During the class, he's explaining to the students, Bolo Krishna, chant the holy name, Bhaja Krishna, worship Lord Krishna, Shuno Krishna Nam, hear the glories of the Lord, hear the name of the Lord. Aha Nisha, Sri Krishna Charan Koro Dhyan. Aha Nisha, day and night. Sri Krishna Charan, the lotus feet of the Lord, Koro Dhyan, simply remember the lotus feet of the Lord day and night. This is the message that Mahaprabhu is giving his students. Krishna Mata, Krishna Pita, Krishna is your mother, Krishna is your father, Krishna Pranadan. Krishna is your life and wealth. Charane Doriya Bali, Krishna Dehomon. I fall at your lotus feet. Charane Doriya Bali, I fall at your lotus feet. Mahaprabhu, I fall at your lotus feet. He's saying to his students, Charane Doriya Bali, Krishna Deho Mon. Absorb your mind in Krishna. Krishna Deho Mon. Absorb your mind in Krishna. So in this way, Mahaprabhu is preaching. It's the first time that Mahaprabhu is actually, we could say formally preaching the glories of the holy name. Here, the first time it's actually happening. Previously, there was a short incident. This is perhaps perhaps 3 or 4 years earlier, when Mahaprabhu visited East Bengal, at that time in Faridpur, then one Brahmin, Tapan Mishra, he inquired about the purpose of life, and Mahaprabhu at that time, although he was in the mood of a scholar in the Vidya Lila, but he began to instruct in the importance of Harinam. He quoted the verses of the Bhagavatam, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva Nasteva Gotinandatar. And that in this Kali Yuga, the holy name, holy name, holy name is the only way for spiritual development in this Kali Yuga. And from the Kali Santarana Upanishad, Mahaprabhu quoted that Iti Soda Ashakam Nam Nam, these 16 names, Kali Kalmasha Nashanam, they're particularly designed to destroy all of the inebrities of Kali Yuga. Nata paratara paya sarva vedeshu drishyate. Even if one is to undergo a complete search of all the Vedic literature, he will not find a more effective process for self-realization in the Kali Yuga than chanting the 16 names of the holy name of Krishna, the Mahamantra. Mahaprabhu is quoting various verses to Tapan Mishra, and then he personally says that Shuno Mishra Kali Yuga Nahi Tapa Jogya. There's no allocation of performing jagya or tapa, austerities and yagyas in the Kali Yuga. Jai John Krishna Bhaji, Shai Mahabhagya. The one who chants the holy name of Krishna, he's the most fortunate, and he gets the results of all these other activities just by chanting the holy name in Kali Yuga. And then Mahaprabhu says that A Shlok Nam Bali Lai Mahamantra Shala Nam Baitrish Akka A Tantra. A Shlok Nam Bali Lai Mahamantra. I'm giving this mantra. A Shlok Nam Bali Lai Mahamantra, the Mahamantra. Shala Nam, 16 names. Shala Nam Baitrish Akka, 32 syllables. A Tantra. This is the process. And so Mahaprabhu at that time briefly, he formally was preaching the holy name of the Lord. When he was a child and he was crying, he was very restless, and he was demand all sorts of things from his parents, from Vishwambar, from Vishwarup. He would give me the moon, give me the stars, and he would cry incessantly if they couldn't give. Mahapratika, Ache Mahapratika, Shabai Ache Ek Mahapratika, Harinam Shunile, Prabhu Arkandaya. And then they discovered a great solution, that Shabai Ache Ek Mahapratikar, Harinam Shunile, if you chant the holy name, Prabhu Arkandaya, the Lord would stop crying. So in this way, in an indirect way, in his childhood, he was also inducing everyone to chant the holy name. So there's a couple of occasions like that. But now we see it's really the first formal preaching of the holy name of the Lord that Mahaprabhu does. And in this way, he's beginning the Prem Sankirtan movement. A Shab Krishna Das Janiha Nishchoy. Certainly, Vrindavan Das Thakur is concluding that the students of Mahaprabhu who were able to experience, first of all, they were his students. Can you imagine going every day to class and you're learning grammar from the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Well, what an experience that would be. It's not something that an ordinary student or an ordinary person could have. So Vrindavan Das Thakur explains that Aishab Krishna Das Jani Anishchoy. Certainly all of the students of Mahaprabhu, they're eternal associates of the Lord, and they're all devotees of the Lord. Krishna Jaha Padayen Sheiki on Nahoy. How could it be possible? How could they not be eternal associates of the Lord, considering that Krishna himself is their teacher, and they're going every day and taking the class? And also they are witnessing these extraordinary changes and manifestation, the first real manifestations of love of God that Mahaprabhu was demonstrating and revealing. He was revealing those to his students. So naturally they're very special. Mahaprabhu inquired from his students after the class, how were my explanations of the verbal roots? And the students explained that these transformations that come over you when you hear the transcendental subject matter of Krishna are so wonderful and Mahaprabhu inquired, what transformations did you see? And they said, well, yesterday you went to the bank of the Ganga to give class and you heard the Brahmin reciting the verse of the Bhagavatam. You fell down unconscious as though the life air had left your body. You're in a trance, and unrestricted tears of love of God had poured from your eyes like the flowing of Ma Ganga. And the shivering and uncontrollable eruptions in your body that even 1,000 men could not have held you down. we all embraced you and were able to bring you back to external consciousness, but everyone, all the people there, everyone was commenting that you're the Supreme Narayan. Your explanations of the aphorisms of the different word meanings for the last 10 days, you've simply described devotional service to Lord Krishna and the glories of the name of Krishna, and you haven't followed any of the standard curriculum in the books. And Mahaprabhu explained that Krishna Barna Ek Shishu Murila Bajai Shab Deki Tai Boli Sharbatai, that I'm always seeing Krishna Barna, a blackish Krishna Bala Ek Shishu, a young boy. I'm always seeing a young boy, Murali Bajai, who's playing the flute. A young blackish Krishna Barna, a young boy, he's playing the flute. Shabai Deki, I'm seeing him all the time. Dai Boli, so therefore I'm on, all I can do is speak about him. Dai Boli, Boli Sharbatai, all the time. I can't stop speaking about him because that's all I can see. Then Mahaprabhu explained, he apologized. He said, I'm sorry, I can't teach anymore. Can you believe it? The great Nimai Pandit, Dvijamani, the jewel of the Navadip Brahmins, he's retiring from teaching. I cannot teach anymore. You have complete freedom, he said to the students, to go and find another teacher, but I cannot give classes anymore. I cannot say anything about, I cannot speak anything apart from Lord Krishna and his pastimes, his name and his pastimes. It's not possible for me to teach you any longer. And in this way, Mahaprabhu, he tied his books in a cloth, a reddish cloth. He tied his books in a cloth, tied. The students replied, having had you as a teacher, how could we possibly accept another teacher? So if you're deciding not to teach anymore, then we will not study anymore. And in this way, the students also, they took their books and they tied their books into the cloth. E mote poripurna bidda bilashe shankirtan aramber hoilo prakashe. And in this way, Vrindavandas Thakur is explaining that Mahaprabhu concluded his pastime, his vidya, pastimes of learning. E mote poripurna bidda bilasa. He fully concluded. Of course, his pastimes as a scholar were very glorious. Sarva Navadipe, Prati Nogare, Shishigon Shange Biddarash Kridakore. These are his Lila in Navadip, that Prati Nogare, in every community, in every town, Prati Nogare, Sishigon Sange with his students, Biddarash Kridakore. He's enjoying the mellow of learning. And now that particular period of his life has come to, of his pastimes have come to a conclusion. E motto paripurna bidya bilase, Shankirtan arambe hoilo prakashe. And the Shankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, aramba hoilo prakashe, had begun. And then the students, they inquired from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how to perform Sankirtan. They inquired, how can we also perform the Sankirtan that you're glorifying so much? Shishagon bolen, kemon Sankirtan, apane shikayen Prabhu Shishachinandan, kemon Sankirtan, please tell us, apane shikayen Prabhu Shishachinandan, hey Sachinandan, Prabhu, kemon Sankirtan, tell us how to perform this Harinam Sankirtan. And Mahaprabhu at that time, he personally instructed them to this mantra, which Prabhupada describes as being very dear to Lord Chaitanya, and another form of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Mahaprabhu at that time instructed his students to chant Haraye Nama Krishna Yadhavaya Namaha Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan. And in this way he engaged them in chanting the holy name, and the Sankirtan movement had begun in Navadip Dham. So that's interesting, actually, this mantra, as Thakur Bhaktivinoda sings, that Gauda Bihito Kirtana Shune Ananda Hridoy Nache. When I hear the Gauda Bihito Kirtan, the kirtans which are authorized by Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya has authorized the 16 name, 32 syllable Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We chant that in kirtan. And this mantra, Haraye Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan. Actually, these two mantras are the predominant mantras we should chant in the kirtan. And devotees somehow these days, they don't do that. Other things are chanted, and this is not chanted sufficiently, but you can chant this mantra in the kirtan as Mahaprabhu used it and preached this mantra and personally chanted this mantra. And in this way, Mahaprabhu, he became over, they were performing Sankirtan. He and his students began performing Sankirtan. Abhishta hoya Prabhu, Nijanam Roshe. Nijanam Roshe, tasting the mellow of his own name. Mahaprabhu, he became intoxicated with love of Godhead. Abhishta hoya Prabhu, Nijanam Roshe. Goda Godi, rolling on the ground. Goda Godi Jaya Prabhu, Dulaya Abeshe, rolling on the ground, oblivious to everything around him. And calling out, sing on to the students, carry on chanting the holy name. So hearing this kirtan, all of the surrounding Vaishnavas in the area, they all heard and they all became extremely overwhelmed with joy, seeing Mahaprabhu performing Sankirtan with his students, as this was the desire of all the Vaishnavas. If only our Sankirtan movement, then how much bliss we would experience. So Prabhur Abesh Deki, when they saw all the devotees, when the Prabhur Abesh Deki, when they saw his state of overwhelmed love of Godhead, Prabhur Abesh Deki, Sharva Bhaktagon, Parama Apurva Shabe Babe Monemon, Parama Apurva, they'd never experienced, they'd never imagined anything so wonderful. Parama Apurva, the most wonderful thing, Shabai Babe Monemon, in their minds. They're thinking, this is the most wonderful thing. Prabhu Abesh Deki, seeing the symptoms of love of Godhead manifesting in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Parama Santo Shab Hoilo Ontare, within their hearts, everyone was enjoying the extreme happiness. A Shab Kirtan Hoilo Nodiya Nagare. And in this way, the Sankirtan movement had begun in Navadip Dham. Are there any questions on the topics discussed this morning?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class. If anyone have a question, please raise your digital hand. I can unmute you. Yes, Ananay Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Can unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we hear about Gopinath Acharya once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reaches Jagannath Puri. But in the Adi Khand, are there any pastimes? Because he has been a very powerful devotee, because he helped Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to convince him to become a true devotee. So in that way, Prabhuji, if you can help us with some pastimes of Gopinath.
We mentioned him today. We mentioned him today, that he was there also in the house of Srivash Thakur picking flowers. His name was mentioned there. It says Gopinath. Whether that's the same Gopinath, perhaps it is. So he's mentioned there. But I can't recall other places where he's mentioned in the Adi Khanda Shri Chaitanya Bhagavat. But certainly in Jagannath Puri, he's described as being a resident of Navadip. Gopinath Acharya, I think he's the brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he knows the residents of Navadip, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya doesn't. And when they go onto the roof of the palace of the king, it's Gopinath Acharya who announces, Gauda Hoite Vaishnavasya Chindui Shotta Mahaprabhu Bhakti Shab Mahabhagavata. 200 devotees have come from Bengal. They're assembled on the banks of the Lake Narendra Sharaba, and they're all greatly advanced devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gopinath Acharya then goes on to describe them all. He mentions them all. He's familiar with them all. So he'd gone to Puri at that time. But yes, he was in Mayapur, Navadip for sufficient time to know all the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who are participating in the Sankirtan movement. So that's all we can say about Gopinath at this point, Gopinath Acharya.
Hare Krishna.
Something
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So the Hariharaya Nama Krishna, sometimes we see devotees singing at the end of Mangalarati, Samsaradava. Can we sing during other artis or just the
You
four
can sing
lines?
it any time that you'd sing the Maha Mantra, you can sing this mantra, because Prabhupada says it's another form of the Maha Mantra. Prabhupada said it should be chanted constantly in Mayapur. Sometimes devotees confuse it with a bhajan of Narottam, Nam Sankirtan bhajan, which is written after. Nam Sankirtan bhajan of Narottam Thakur Mahashaya, that's Harayi Nama Krishna Yadavaya, Madhavaya, Giridhari, what is that? Yadavaya, Madhavaya, Gopa. Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan Girid Hari Gopinath Madan Mohan. That's the bhajan, the first 4 lines they sing. But actually, he's taken 2 of the lines of Mahaprabhu. He's added extra lines. He's made a bhajan. But these 2 lines, what Mahaprabhu is teaching or what Mahaprabhu is chanting, Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan. So that can be chanted anytime you're chanting the Mahamantra. Anytime you're chanting the Mahamantra, those 2 lines can be included. So yes, in Mangaluru they can be chanted. They can be chanted at any arati. Generally, we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But if you want to chant something different, this can be chanted, and this is preferable to any other mantras that the devotees sometimes sing in the kirtans. Even Nitai Gauranga, okay, but not so much. Prabhupada didn't object to it, but it's a later mantra, and it's not actually mentioned there in Mahaprabhu's teachings directly as these mantras, Hare Krishna mantra and Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan. Something else this morning?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
So that concludes our presentation of the inauguration of the Sankirtan movement in Mayapur. We've been discussing for the last 4 or 5 sessions, I think 4 or 5. And we'll be taking a break from classes for the next month. We'll be traveling out of Mayapur, so we won't be giving the Sunday morning classes. But when we return after mid-September, on the 3rd week of September, we'll return and we'll carry on. If you so desire, we'll carry on with the sessions in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and we'll be describing the first few chapters of the Madhya Lila, of how Mahaprabhu began performing Sankirtan, and how the other key members of the Panchatattva, Srivas Thakur, Gadadhar Pandit, and Advaita Thakur and Nityananda Prabhu, how they gradually gathered and Panchatattva was established. That's described in the first 5 or 6 chapters of the Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Bhagavat, and we'll be discussing that in the subsequent sessions when we return in mid-September. We wish you all the best. Vidya Bhakti Labho. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Krishna.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam.